What's up, everyone?
Hey everybody.
Welcome to another Travel Therapy Mentor video. Tonight we're going to be talking about keeping your expenses low as a travel therapist. So we recently did a poll in one of our groups, and about 50% of the travelers that answered in that group are currently out of work. So, if you're thinking about your income minus your expenses being how much money you have left over, all those people are either living off of savings or off of unemployment. And as we know, unemployment is much lower than regular travel pay. So we're going to talk about some ways that we have over the years kept our expenses very low. In the past, when we were traveling full time, I was saving somewhere between 80 and 90% of my income while traveling. So I have done a lot of research on keeping expenses low, and so hopefully we can give you guys some insight. I'm going to get this video shared in a couple different groups, and Whitney is going to introduce us.
All right, hey everybody, thank y'all for joining us tonight. My name is Whitney Aiken.
And I'm Jared Kazaza.
And we are both traveling PTs. Many of you guys may have tuned in the past for our weekly videos. We run the website and the social media page, Travel Therapy Mentor, and each week we bring you a new video on a different topic. Some of the topics we might rehash that we've done in the past. We've talked a little bit about income and expenses in the past, and just how to be more financially savvy as a traveler, but we feel like it's ever more important right now. So like Jared said, he's going to share our video in a couple of groups so that more people can join on with us live, and then we'll dive into the topic a little deeper. If you are joining on with us live tonight on Facebook, we'd love if you'd say hello. I see a few of you guys are already on live, so thanks for tuning in. We'd love if you'd say hi, let us know who you are. Are you a current traveler? Are you someone who's thinking about doing travel therapy? And we'd like to know about your current situation, because like Jared said, a recent poll that we did in one of our groups showed that a lot of our colleagues are unemployed right now and are not working. So I know that's really affecting everybody's finances in the year 2020 in a way that they probably didn't anticipate. Right, so we'd love to hear from you. We will take some questions throughout the video and at the end of the video, and we welcome any comments you have. So as Jared said, unfortunately the job market for us therapists has taken a huge hit, and every week we'll talk to, we work with recruiters at different companies, and we'll try to get some background and some insight and find out if anything is getting better. Unfortunately, this past couple weeks, we basically heard that the job market is about the same. There maybe been incremental improvements in the job market, but really it continues to be a very difficult market. So we're not sure when we'll get out of this and when things will get better. So in the meantime, if increasing our income side of the equation isn't really feasible for a lot of us right now, we might want to look at the other side of the financial equation, and that is our expenses. What are some ways that we can reduce our expenses now that can help us right now in the present time when we're hurting for money, but also what are some habits and some things that we can build and change for our future, so if something like this ever happens again where we find ourselves with lower income, unemployed, that you can ride out that storm, because we do know a lot of our fellow travel therapists that are in a good financial situation because they've saved up a good nest egg, have a lot of savings, and they have a lot of flexibility in their lifestyle and the ability to take these long periods off of work. But there's some people that maybe didn't plan that well or didn't have a good savings. So we just want to talk tonight about some ways that you can reduce your expenses and set yourself up for more financial success in the future.
Yeah, tonight's video actually was going to be like a June update on the job market, but really no new news. So we figured that this would be a more beneficial topic to talk about. So it's tough right now in terms of the job market, and I know a lot of people are struggling, especially travel therapists, because some of the people, like we said, 50% out of work, probably a large percentage of those have been out of work for several months. And yeah, the ones that aren't fortunate enough to have a big savings are struggling.
Yeah. So we kind of have some different categories here where we think that you as well as us can focus on our expenses. So the different categories that we have, and we'll kind of go into more detail here, are housing expenses, transportation expenses, moving expenses, since we as travelers move a lot, taxes, which a lot of people don't think about as an expense, but we'll go into that further, food, budget, and then utilities/bills, and then we'll get into talking about a couple other more detailed things.
So the biggest expense for almost everyone, and this is especially the case for travelers, is housing. For us, housing can be a lot more expensive because we're paying for duplicate. Almost everybody that's a traveler is paying for two two houses basically, like your home, your tax home, as well as your travel assignment home. So being able to save some money there is huge. I mean, and last year I tracked all my expenses for the year, and I think housing and utilities came out to over 50% of my entire spending for the year. And that was because part of that, we were traveling, part of it was on a travel assignment, and then the other part was paying for a tax home. So reducing that cost can be huge.
Yeah, so a big thing that we've talked about in the past when you're a travel therapist is you have to maintain that tax home. And what you choose to do in order to maintain your tax home will make a big difference on your budget, your monthly budget, and your yearly budget. So a lot of people, if you already own a house and then you say that you decide to become a traveler, and now you have this house, so in most circumstances, if you plan to return to your home and you don't want to get rid of that house, you're going to keep your house, and then you're going to go out, and you're obviously going to have higher you're going to go out to travel, you're obviously going to have higher expenses than someone who, say, just rents a room back at home at their parents' house or with a friend or has an apartment. So it's up to you whether, that's what works for your lifestyle or not, but it is going to impact your budget. In times like this, I think with just kind of our worlds all having been flipped on their head, it's like we need to maybe just reassess our lifestyle and see if the choices that you're making or the choices that you have made in the past 10 years or so are going to suit you moving forward. So it might have made a lot of people who previously had a big house with a big mortgage reconsider, is this really what I want? Do I want to be a slave to paying this mortgage all the time for the next 30 years until I'm old so that I have to work a full career? Or could I consider downsizing maybe into a smaller house with a lower mortgage or a different situation if I don't see myself being there long term or whatever? So just some things to think about.
Yeah, I think there are really two optimal ways to save on tax home costs. One being having your own place and then renting it out while you're traveling. So either renting it out short-term, Airbnb type thing, or rent it out long-term, all but one room. And then the other way would be to rent a room in a house. So that's what we did for our first 4 years traveling. We rented a room in a house, paying between $300 and $400 a month. So in our area, rooms and houses are extremely cheap. That was even on the high end. So you can find places that are a single room in this area that are $250 to $300 a month with utilities included, depending on where you want to live. So renting a room in a house can save you a ton of money. If you're renting an apartment right now that's $1,200 a month, you might be able to save 75% of that money by renting a room instead. And if you're traveling most of the year, say you take 3 contracts per year and then you travel internationally, you spend some time at home, you're not there very often. So that 75% savings or 50% savings can be huge. And it really is only for the most part, in our opinion, it's not a huge inconvenience since you're not there that often anyway.
Yeah.
And then the other side of that, like we said, now we've bought a house, we plan to rent out the house while we're traveling. So we will keep our room, we'll rent out the rest of the place, probably be able to cover all the bills here with just being able to rent it out. So we essentially eliminated our tax home cost, but we still have the duplicate expenses.
Yeah, so I think you just have to, in order to apply this to your personal situation, you need to look at where you are in life. If you're somebody who's a new grad or haven't had a really permanent perm home situation, like permanent tax home situation, you might have more flexibility to choose to continue to rent a pretty expensive apartment or house that you have versus get rid of that rent and then just, ask a family member or a friend if you can rent a room in their house to keep as your permanent address and your tax home. If you are somebody who already owns your own home, then you could look at some other ways of optimizing your housing situation back at home by renting out some of your space in your own house to other travelers, to Airbnb or whatever, so that you can bring in more income and reduce your overall monthly expenses.
Which a lot of people refer to as house hacking. So if you search for house hacking, I wrote an article on this, it got deleted, I'm gonna have to rewrite it, but about like what our plan is with house hacking our house to eliminate the tax expense. So that's definitely an option. So now in terms of decreasing expenses while you're traveling on your actual assignment, there's a few different ways there. Obviously, we traveled in the fifth wheel, which meant that we had higher upfront costs, but our monthly expenses were very low. On average, we were paying probably, I would say, between $500 and $550 a month with utilities included for our campgrounds over the 3 years that we stayed at. So split between the two of us, that was incredibly low cost. You can also think about renting a room at an assignment location. And you can also, a lot of people their default is Airbnb, and we've definitely looked on Airbnb as well, but we almost always find that Airbnb is more expensive than a lot of other options. So you can a lot of times find cheaper options for housing on like Furnish Finder or on Craigslist even. And you have to be careful with sites like Craigslist because, or probably Facebook Marketplace is the same way. You might be able to find places on there as well. We just haven't really used that as much. But you have to be careful with Craigslist because there are some scams on there. We have, both times that we've done it, it's been legit. We talked to the people beforehand, made sure it was a good fit for us, and then moved in. So you never want to send someone money before you know that it's going to be a real place and a good fit for you. So you have to be careful there, but you can save a lot of money by using sites other than Airbnb.
So I think a big mistake that a lot of people make is they look at the stipend that they're receiving for housing and they think, wow, I'm getting paid all this money for housing, so I can afford a $2,000 apartment or whatever it is. But we encourage you not to look at it that way. We encourage you to try to get, whenever possible, the cheapest housing available that will suit your needs. I mean, obviously, if you're traveling with a family or something and you really need to have your own full apartment or own full house or whatever when you're at your travel location. But if you are a single traveler and you have the option to rent a room inside of someone else's house, you're going to save a lot of money. Or just kind of look at outside the box at some of these options. We always tried to go with the very cheapest thing possible. We never looked at it in terms of, well, we're making this much so we can spend this much. We just always looked at it was, what's the cheapest thing we could possibly find in the area that will suit our needs.
Yeah, I think that's the key is you don't want to go so cheap that it makes your life miserable. You want to make sure that it's a good place for you. Like, I would much rather pay $600 a month and stay in a place that's a one bedroom than pay $400 a month and stay in a room in a house. So obviously you have to weigh the pros and cons there. Having your own space is valuable. And so if that's not something that would work well for you, you're not good, interacting with people after work, things like that, then maybe you want to find a private place, but just try to look on some of the sites where you might be able to find something a little lower cost.
I think another thing in terms of finding housing and expenses for your travel location that's often overlooked is the cost of living of the location that you're going to be going. So a lot of people, when they're looking at travel contracts, they just look at how much money could I make, and they get blinded by this huge paycheck. They're like, wow, I could make $1,900 or $2,000 a week if I go to San Francisco. So let me go to San Francisco. But what they overlook is that the cost of living in San Francisco is huge. So their housing expenses are going to be through the roof. So where you might make $300 more a week on the income side, you might be spending $700 more a month or whatever it might be, or $1,000 more a month to live there. So we have had really good success staying in some lower cost of living areas where we were making a pretty decent salary still, $1,600, $1,700, $1,800 a week, but paying a fraction of the cost to live there for our housing expenses.
Yeah, I think that's really key. Look at the cost of living compared to the pay, because yes, we have looked at some high paying jobs on the West Coast. Not only is housing more expensive, but everything's more expensive. Gas is more expensive, food's more expensive, everything. So we would much rather work in a place that's low cost of living and make $200 or $300 less a week than work in a high cost of living area where housing is going to be more and everything else is going to be more. We found that, running the calculations, I think we come out ahead living and working in these rural areas where we make a little bit less, but cost of living is very low. And in our opinion as well, I mean, everyone is different here, but our opinion is a lot of times the patients are more laid back and the clinics are more laid back, and it's a better experience than working in like a busy city as well.
Yeah, so a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight, I mean, it's up to a matter of opinion. Like, you might have different reasons for traveling than we do. You might want to see different things. You might enjoy cities, and that's fine. But if we're strictly talking about the expenses and the budgeting side of things, we can definitely give you a lot of good tips in regards to saving money, because that's a big question we get a lot. People are like, Jared's 30, how old are you now, 31?
31.
How have you saved so much? How have you got yourself in such a good financial situation? How are you not working anymore most of the time because you're semi-retired? And so we're telling you a lot of the answers, a lot of the things that we've done to set ourselves up for financial success, and also to put ourselves in a position to be able to ride out a period of time without work safely and securely.
Yep. Thank you guys that are watching live. We're going to wait and go through the comments and questions at the end. These videos are also going to be put on podcast format now. We just started the podcast today, so we don't want to spend a lot of time going through comments and questions during the middle of the video, so we'll wait till the end. But if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them. And if you could, please like the video so more people see it.
Yeah, thanks guys.
So next is transportation. My thoughts on this have changed over the years, and I think being a traveler has in some ways actually made me less frugal on the transportation front. I used to always think that you should buy a used car. I still think you should buy a used car. But in my opinion, I was always buying cars that were 10 years old or more. And I was always, I didn't, so I guess I should talk about how I used to be. When I would look for a car, I wasn't looking for a certain brand or anything like that. I was looking for the best deal on a car I could get. I would get a car, drive it for a year or two, and then sell it, and usually make money on the car after driving it for a year or two. So that was kind of my my way of looking at transportation. You should almost never have to pay for a depreciating asset. That has changed because those cars that are older, that are very good deals and things like that, are not always the most reliable, and that's something I found out. And now I do not think it's worth it. With how much we make as travelers, I don't think buying a car that's very old, that's unreliable, especially for long trips, is worth it.
Yeah, I think that makes a huge difference because I think back then you were just commuting locally, you were in town, you had a family member who might be able to help you if you had a breakdown or something like that. But reliability of your transportation is huge if you are going to be going long distances across country, if you're not going to have your normal support systems around. So you do want to make sure that you have a vehicle that's at least reliable, but we still are big proponents of buying used, gently used.
Now, I think the sweet spot, in my opinion, at this point is probably in the 5 to 10 year old range for a car, and probably somewhere around 100,000 miles. And the reason for that is cars take by far the biggest depreciation in that first 5 year period. On average, a car depreciates between 50 and 60% of its value in the first 5 years. So if you can buy it after that point, when a lot of that depreciation hit is already gone, then you can save a lot of money over the lifetime of owning that car. And it's even worse if you buy a brand new car. In the first year, it loses about 20% of its value, and in some cases even more than that. So buying a brand new car, you're guaranteed to lose a lot of money in depreciation. So somewhere between the 5 and 10 year range, 100,000 miles or so, where it's still a pretty reliable car, I think that is probably a very good idea for most travelers.
And I think this is hard for a lot of people to hear. Because I think there's a lot of people that delay gratification, kind of deprive themselves of nice things when they're in school. So if you're like us and you start thinking about traveling therapy relatively in the beginning of your career, whether you're like a new grad or you're 1 or 2 years out, you might have been driving the old car that you had all through high school, all through college. Maybe it's on its last leg. I was there. I had my vehicle that I'd had all through high school and college. And the transmission was about to go out on it. It was rough, like right around the time we were starting. I think it was like our first year of travel therapy. And I was definitely in the boat of, well, you know what? I'm sick of having an unreliable car. I have a paycheck now. I want to get a nice car, and I need to have a reliable car so that we can, travel long distances. So, the thought crossed my mind to get a brand new car, but luckily I'm, dating Jared, and Jared's like, no, don't buy a new car. It depreciates so quickly. So I was able to get a really good deal on a car that was only a year old. I got it at a significant discount from buying it new off the lot. I bought it used with one prior owner, like 20,000 miles. So I probably paid a little bit more than, by Jared's strategy, what he would have paid, but I paid a lot less for basically a brand new car than I would have if it was brand new.
Yeah, and another factor here to consider is fuel efficiency. So buying a used car, I think, is vital, but also buying one that's pretty efficient on fuel, because most travelers are taking pretty long trips, either from assignment to assignment or from taking road trips like we like to take. You need a car that's pretty fuel efficient. And luckily, fuel efficiency has gotten better and better over the years, so it's not as bad as it used to be. But still, if you can avoid like a full-size SUV or like a diesel pickup truck that we had for several years, not very good on gas. So
thank God we never had to go all the way across country in the truck.
Yeah, I think like the crossover type cars or like a full-size sedan or even like a small SUV are probably ideal, because you need enough storage space to get all your stuff in there when you're traveling from assignment to assignment, but they're still, there's enough storage space, but they're also still pretty fuel efficient. I think that's probably the best thing for most people.
Yep, I ended up with a 2015 it was 2016. So then it was a 2015 vehicle that I got. It was a Hyundai Tucson. It's a small SUV, and I love it. And we took it cross country.
I think they're called crossovers. I think that's the type of vehicle.
But the Tucson's an SUV. I don't think it's a crossover.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway.
So that's a little bit about transportation. So the next part we're going to talk about is kind of goes along with transportation, but moving. So as travelers, obviously we have to move from place to place. This is very much going to depend on kind of your strategy and your goals with travel therapy. So a lot of people only plan to travel 1 to 2 to 3 years, and they have certain spots they want to check off on their list. But if you are a little bit more flexible, you could try to do what we set out to do in the beginning was we were going to incrementally work our way across the country. So we were going to start with the East Coast and make all of our moves within, less than a 20-hour drive, 15 to 20 hours, and just move slowly across the country and then spend a little more time in each area to cut down on these big moves for a couple of reasons. Mostly because you would have to take longer periods of time off where you're not getting paid, which is going to cost you more in the long run when you're taking a whole week off to move from A to B. But again, it's going to depend on your strategy. It's also going to depend on where the jobs are.
Yeah, I've written about this in the past. This is what I think a lot of travelers don't think about is the opportunity cost of taking long or making long moves. Not only do you have the potential for something to happen on the trip, either like a wreck or a car breakdown or something like that delays your start date, but also if you move, say, 3,000 miles, there's no way you can do that in a weekend. You at least have to take a week, but most people take 2 weeks off. And there is an opportunity cost that comes along with that. And that's why we chose almost every assignment was within like 200 or 300 miles of where the last assignment was, so we could move and get started right away and have no downtime. Like Whitney said, obviously this depends on what your goals are as a traveler. If your goals are to work in certain cities and explore the country and finances, it's not your top motivating factor like it was for us, then that's a different story. I mean, you do what works for you, but in terms of saving money, making shorter jumps for assignments is going to save money.
And it can be really expensive to move all the way back and forth across the country. If you're hopping back from East Coast to West Coast to Alaska to Hawaii, it can be really expensive and it can add up. So trying to make those smaller moves, like I know we were talking to some other travelers that are from the East Coast, and they had made their way out to the West Coast, and they, even though they have their licenses back on the East Coast, they're like, we really want to get the West Coast out of our system first, work all our contracts that we want to do on the West Coast before we go all the way back to the East Coast. So it's a strategy you can try to do to cut down your expenses.
Yeah, so another thing we have here, something that people don't think of as an expense, but really is an expense, and usually it's one of the biggest expenses for people, is taxes. And the reason it's an expense is because it's something that you can actually decrease. Obviously, if you make less money, you decrease it, but that's not ideal. The biggest way to decrease your taxes, though, is to contribute to tax-deferred accounts. So things like traditional 401k, traditional IRA, and a health savings account. Doing that and taking consistent contracts, taking a little bit of time off, but maxing out all those accounts, we were able to, for at least 3 years out of the 5 years we traveled, get our federal tax rate all the way down to 0%. So we were paying $0 in federal taxes by maxing out all those accounts, and in addition having stipends obviously for our living expenses, our meals and incidentals. So it's possible to pay $0 in federal taxes and reduce your tax liability significantly if you contribute to those accounts. And for some people that will save $5,000 or $6,000 a year.
Yeah, so you're already getting tax benefits by being a travel therapist. Part of our pay isn't taxed. If you're being a traditional traveler, that means a tax home. So that's a huge pro right there. You're already reducing your taxable income, but then contributing to these accounts, like Jared said, that was all completely foreign to me. I didn't understand all that because in a way you're kind of giving away some money. You're not able to put it in savings for immediate use if you put it in your 401k, but you're putting it towards your future. And as travel therapists, we do make a significantly amount more than a perm therapist in most situations. So you should have the extra income to at least put some aside into a tax deferred savings account. It'll really help your tax burden at the end of the year.
Yeah, and if you think about, I've done the math on this a ton of times, and there have several articles on it. But if you think about a traditional traveler is usually probably making somewhere around $40,000 a year taxable income. If you max out your 401k alone, that now is $20,000. So that will reduce your taxable income from $40,000 down to $20,000. The standard deduction is, I think it's $12,400 for 2020. So that means that you're only actually getting taxed on $8,000 of that income. And then obviously if you max out a health savings account, a traditional IRA, you can get that all the way down to the standard deduction amount, which means that you're paying nothing on that income.
And I know a lot of this sounds like just mumbo jumbo to you if you don't know anything about all this stuff. So luckily for you, Jared's written really detailed articles about it at our blog at fifthwheelpt.com. So if you're very confused about all that, if you're just starting out, please go and read some of his articles. I think he literally wrote one that was titled like paying $0 in taxes.
So that's on Travel Therapy Mentor.
Oh, is that one on
Yeah, Travel Therapy Mentor article, and it's called like paying $0 in federal taxes and $0 student loan payment.
Okay, so that one would be under traveltherapymentor.com under finances.
Yep. So that's a good one. If you're interested in that, and yeah, that's another big thing is if you're on income-based repayment plan, the further you can get your taxable income down, the lower the payment is. So there are also benefits there.
Yep. So anyway, some more homework reading for you guys if you're just now learning about all that kind of stuff, but it is a way that you can reduce your expenses in the long run.
All right, so another line item on a lot of people's budgets that's usually pretty high is food costs. This is somewhere that we have gotten a lot more lenient over the last couple of years, and you can also tell we've gained weight over the last couple of years, and it's partially because of being more lenient on eating out. When we first started traveling, we were very health conscious and we were trying to save as much as possible, so we were eating out very minimally and cooking a lot at home. And if you do it that way, we were able to keep our food budget. Normally we were spending like, I think it was like $100 a week that we were spending between the two of us. So basically in total, we're spending about $200 a month on food each. And eating out, we would eat out once a week, and that kept our expenses extremely low.
Yeah, so cooking at home, meal prepping, being mindful of your grocery budget, trying to take advantage of coupons and discounts and off-brand stuff, it's really gonna make a big difference in the long run. And I think people know that, and that's pretty obvious, but I think what people don't think enough about is things like those small eating out occasions that we do, like getting lunch, coffee, things like that when you're at work or on your way to work. So drinking coffee out instead of making it at home can really add up over time. Paying $10 or $11 or $12 for lunch when you could make lunch at home, you make a sandwich or whatever it is for like $2, it makes a huge difference. And then going out and drinking on the weekends, back when that sort of thing was allowed, depending on what city you're in, alcoholic beverages out are super expensive, so we really try to cut back on that. Drink at home whenever possible, or pregame, call an Uber. So a lot of those things can really add up in the long run, and I don't think when you're just looking at your day-to-day that you think as much about that, but it really can. If you were to sit down and write down the math, like $10 a day for lunches 5 days a week, that's $50 a week times whatever, it really does add up.
Yeah, I mean, when we were traveling, like I said, our food budget in terms of groceries was probably $200 a month or less, and then eating out we were probably spending $50 a month or less each. Nowadays it's a lot higher than that, so there's a huge difference there, and those things really do add up quickly. So things like going out and getting a couple beers, that adds up very fast.
Yeah. But, if that's your thing, you do you, but it is one line item that you can cut back on your budget.
Yep. Everything's about priorities. I mean, all these things are you can take what you can and leave what doesn't work for you.
Absolutely. The other thing I want to talk about is like finding deals on food and stuff like that. So if anybody's a member of our Healthcare Travelers on Fire group, you'll see earlier this week, Jared made a post about getting free food via Uber Eats. Jared is like the king of just finding deals. If he's not finding deals where he can make money, he's finding deals where he can save money.
It's true.
But it's no huge secret. Like, it's not just some like, how does Jared find all these things? He literally uses Doctor of Credit. It's a website called Doctor of Credit.
A few other websites, but that's definitely the primary one.
And they'll advertise deals on there, and then again, you can just kind of pick and choose the ones that work for you. So recently, Jared found this like coupon where you signed up for Uber Eats and you could get $30 off your order. So we just got like a bunch of free food.
In the last 2 weeks, we've gotten $110 off at Uber Eats. So we've been eating out Uber Eats a lot.
Yeah, so it's not really helping with our diet or our meal prep at home motto, but it is helping with money.
So yeah, Doctor of Credit. In the last 5 years since I graduated, I bet you I've gone to that website at least 5 times a week for 5 years. So yeah, check it out. There's always some pretty decent deals on there, and I just check in there consistently.
And if you don't want to do all the research, just join our Healthcare Travelers on Fire group, and Jared will usually notify you guys when the good deals come around.
Try to.
So the next thing we want to talk about are utilities and just like bills. So things like your cell phone and that sort of thing.
Yeah, one thing we saved a lot on when we first started traveling was getting budget cell phone plans. What people don't realize a lot of times is that a lot of these cell phone plans are exactly like the name brand carriers. They're just half the price or sometimes even less than that. And sometimes you can get really great deals. Like Whitney and I, one year had an entire year of free Sprint service each.
And it included international.
It included international call and text, and this is when we were spending 5 months in Asia, and it worked out perfectly.
We paid about $3 a month in tax.
$3 a month for a year. But there are plenty of other plans, like obviously those deals don't come around all the time, but there are plenty of other plans where you can get unlimited calling, texting, and a lot of data for $20 or $30 a month.
There's some that I had never heard of, but obviously Jared has dug up in the depths of this financial independence community and his research. There's like Republic Wireless, Mint Mobile. There's the more well-known ones like Straight Talk,
Total
Wireless. And they use the same cell phone towers as Sprint and Verizon and AT&T and all those, so you really don't get that much worse of service by any means. You do have to pick and choose like which types of package you want, whether it's going to be unlimited data, so forth and so on. But a lot of those offer them at a fraction of the cost of the big name carriers.
Yeah, that has been a pretty significant savings. I would say on average we pay $20 to $25 a month for cell phone compared to a lot of people are paying $60 or $70. So obviously that's not a huge savings per month, but over years that adds up.
I think it's also one of those things that a lot of people say, well, I've just always had Verizon, or I was on my parents' Verizon and then I got my own Verizon and I've just always been on it. And you just don't think it's like a bill that just recurs and you don't think anything of it and you're like, well, there's no way to reduce that bill. But if times are tough, if money is tight, you need to start looking at all the different things that you could try to cut out and reduce your expenses. And that's one of those things that you could just make a phone call, do a little bit of internet research. It's really easy these days. We've switched phone carriers several times over the last couple of years just when different deals popped up. And they'll let you transfer your number. All you do is you go online or do whatever you have to do, call in. They mail you a new SIM card and you just pop it in your phone and it's super easy. Of course, you do need to check and make sure the phone that you have is compatible.
And that coverage is good and things like that.
Yeah.
But my favorite so far has been Mint Mobile. So if you want to check that out, probably start there, make sure their coverage works for you. But yeah, they have low cost plans and it's been really great for me.
Another thing I think a lot of people are kind of keen on is cutting cable. So maybe at home, you're not home that much. Why have cable there?
Yep.
On your travel assignments, you're not going to be there for very long. You're probably going to be exploring and doing all kinds of stuff. Why worry about cable? Unless it just happens to be a place that you found on Furnish Finder and they already have cable. But if we were having to go and set up our own utilities at a travel assignment, we would not bother with setting up cable. I mean, Wi-Fi you definitely probably need, but you can always do, or sometimes you can do like a hotspot or something instead of getting the whole cable package. Obviously, a lot of people are, on Netflix and Hulu and all those streaming services now. Those can be a lot cheaper options. You can also consider sharing with a friend or family, like if one family member gets a Hulu subscription and then you get the Netflix subscription and you guys swap because you can usually use multiple devices. So just some things to think about to cut down on costs of entertainment.
Yeah, and the last thing we want to talk about, this is something that gets me really excited. For you guys that are in any of the finance groups that I'm in, you probably already know, but I have done a ton with credit card rewards in the last 5 years. I think I'm somewhere around 45 credit cards I've signed up for in 5 years. For the sign-up bonuses. So I've saved a ton of money that way on travel expenses. Right now you can cash in Chase points for dining expenses and for grocery store expenses. So we've been cashing in some points there. And I would conservatively estimate that I save or make somewhere around $500 a month between credit card and bank account sign-up bonuses. And that probably sounds crazy to some of you guys, but that's probably been the average over a 5-year period. So it's definitely something to put a little bit of time and thought into. You definitely don't have to do as much as I did, but it's an easy way that you could save, I would say at a minimum $200 or $300 a month by just signing up for a card every few months, meeting the spending requirement, get the bonus. Either use that to offset expenses or to book travel so that you don't have to pay out of pocket for that.
Yeah, so you could look at that as both ways. It could be more on the income side of the equation if you're making money, doing a bank account sign-up bonus or getting cash back. But you could look at it as cutting down expenses too because, maybe we as travelers want to take more time off to travel when traveling is allowed, internationally and that sort of thing. So rather than paying out of pocket for flights internationally and hotels and stuff like that, we earn the credit card points, which is free to us, and it cuts down significantly on our budget for traveling for fun. I mean, we don't spend hardly any money to travel for fun.
We've never paid out of pocket for an international flight. They've all been with credit card points. And right now, I made a post the other day in one of the groups. I think we have over 1.2 million points right now accumulated. And to put that in perspective, normally like a flight from the US to Europe would be about 30,000 points. So that is a lot of free travel. And that's
across different companies, different organizations, different airlines, different hotel chains, and that sort of thing. So we just sort of added it. We just wanted to see how big the number could be. So we added up all of our points from all of our different accounts.
Yep. And if you're just starting, you have never had a credit card before, there are some pretty good ones that you can start with. I've written articles about this. If you have a credit score that's not great, there are some beginner ones that I've written about. There's 3 that I like on the Fifth Wheel PT website. I think there's an article called 3 best credit cards for beginners or something like that. But if you have a decent credit score and you can go with one of the higher tier cards, I just got today in the mail the Chase Sapphire Preferred card, which I think is a really good card for a lot of people, and it's going to probably end up saving us about $750. So yeah, it adds up.
Yeah, a lot of people will ask us, what's the best credit card to get or what bank account? It really depends on your situation and what you're trying to use it for. So Jared has written a significant number of articles on our blog on fifthwheelpt.com about these topics. So if you are a beginner in credit card rewards, check out some of those articles. Jared also in our Healthcare Travelers on Fire group will sometimes share good deals that he'll see. But a lot of those deals he sees on Doctor of Credit. So if you want to start scanning Doctor of Credit, they have a lot of good articles on there too where they'll say, this is a good credit card for this. If you want hotel points or if you want airline points or if you just want cash back, they can point you in the right direction too.
Yep.
Yeah, so thank you guys. We want to take some questions and some comments. So if you are watching live, please ask us any questions you have. Leave us a comment. We'll go through a few things here at the end.
Again, please like this video. If you're listening on the podcast, I subscribe, I guess, is what you do with podcasts.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'd love if you just give us a thumbs up if you gained any value from this video. And if you watch later or listen later, on any of the platforms, we'd love if you'd leave us a comment and just let us know that you were there on the replay.
Yep. Nick said Ally is a good bank with great interest rates. Yeah. I think Ally usually has some of the highest interest rates in terms of their savings accounts. I think it's probably around 1.5% right now. So, that's a good point. If you're a traveler that just has like a regional bank with a regular savings account, you're probably getting 0.1% or less in interest on your savings accounts. So look into some of the online banks. I know I use Discover Bank. I think it's like 1.1%, and I just use that because I'm too lazy to switch. There are probably some better ones. Ally is probably better than that, but there are some really good online banks that offer a much higher interest rate.
Yeah, that's something that's definitely overlooked because I think a lot of people get in the habit of just their home bank, but most of banking that we do these days is online anyway. You hardly ever need an actual in-person branch, and you can still keep your, your regular Wells Fargo or your credit union or whatever it is, but you can just put some of your cash in these other accounts just to earn money, earn cash back and stuff on them.
Yep.
Okay, so Nick said we need to go over stock trading.
Yeah, I'm not really big into stock trading, just because I think it's too complex. I've spent a lot of time learning about it, and for a while I thought I was really smart in terms of value investing and things like that, but the amount of research that goes into it makes it not worth it to me. I would rather spend time on other things, but there are some people that do well with it.
Oh, I wanted to mention before we go through the other comments, I did want to mention some resources. So when I was thinking about this video this week, I was listening to some of the podcasts that we listened to. One of the ones I was listening to was called Choose FI, and that's one of our favorite podcasts. And they were talking about some of these things as it pertains to people who have lost their jobs and are also looking to reduce their expenses. And they gave me a lot of inspiration for this talk today. So we really like that podcast. Jared listens to a ton of other financial podcasts where he learns a lot of strategies.
Yeah. And if you're a traveler that's interested in personal finance, Choose FI, I was interviewed on there like probably a year and a half ago. So that would be a good episode to start with. And I can't remember what it is, which episode number it was. But I talked about travel therapy. Yeah, if you search Choose FI, Fifth Wheel PT or something, it would come up.
Yeah, and so what are some of the other financial podcasts that you like?
I really like Afford Anything. I like Radical Personal Finance. I think those are probably my top 3 right now.
Okay. And then I know you have a few books that you usually recommend to people who are just getting into finance or investing.
Yeah, Millionaire Next Door is a very good book. It's more about mindset of saving. The Boglehead's Guide to Investing is a good book. Like I said, I'm not really into stock trading. I would much rather passively invest and spend time doing other things that I can probably get more value from. So I would start with those two. There's also the Choose FI book that was written by a fellow physical therapist, so that's pretty cool. I think those are probably the top three, I would say.
And I can link to, after the video's over, we have some links on our website just to outside resources where you guys can get your financial knowledge started.
All right.
Okay, just a couple more comments here. Again, if y'all have questions, if you're watching live, please let us know.
Lauren said she made it, and she just had a right total knee replacement on 6/18.
I didn't know that, Lauren. I hope you're recovering well. She says, I want to get back to work the first week of August. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Keep working hard in rehab.
You definitely can do it. Nick says, well, I bought a $56,000 truck. Not the wisest choice, but it's loaded. It definitely helps with the inferiority complex.
Yeah.
It's all
Nick,
about priorities.
Priorities. Probably
Yep.
not the best financial choice, but you do you.
Yep.
Jeff, in regards to housing, earlier in the video, Jeff said Facebook Marketplace and Furnished Finder have had good options. He said Airbnb has too many extra fees.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. Hi, Armand. He says, hello from my current assignment in Central New York. I hope your assignment is going well, Armand. Yeah. Lewis says, hey, current traveler here. Thanks for joining us, Lewis. Appreciate it. Kelsey, hello, new grad and hopefully a traveler here. Good luck, Kelsey. I know it's a tough market right now for new grads.
Yep.
So if you have any more questions, please let us know. Let's see, we got a couple more coming in here we'll go through. All right, Nick, that sounds like an interesting job. We won't read that one out loud.
Skip that comment.
Okay. Ashley says, does all of your stuff fit into your 2 cars when you're traveling, or do you have to get a U-Haul or something like that? Do you have a favorite car, truck, or SUV for traveling? Thanks for the question, Ashley.
Yeah. So for us, part of the time was in the camper, so obviously everything fit in there. But recently that we've been finding short-term housing, everything fits in our 2 cars, mostly in Whitney's car, actually. She has a small SUV, a Hyundai Tucson. I think that is probably a really reasonable car for most people. Fairly low cost, pretty good gas mileage, a decent amount of storage space. We put the seats down and we can fit a bunch of tubs in there. We packed that thing full when we left our last assignment.
I went to school far away for undergrad and grad school, so I was constantly moving all of my belongings back and forth. Back then I had a Trailblazer, not as good on gas mileage, but I got really good at packing a car very full, and I think a lot of travelers do. And then I think also as you go on in your traveling, you learn to be more minimalistic and pack smaller. So we know tons of travelers that get by with just their car or a small SUV. And as Jared mentioned, I think a lot of people really like crossover type vehicles, like a Subaru Outback or like some of those others. I'm not really big on car names, so I don't know a lot of them, but kind of a crossover type vehicle. Better on gas mileage too than a big SUV. Lewis said, somewhat unrelated, but would you personally prioritize contributing to a Roth or the additional $6,000 a year to student loans?
In my opinion, I would put it in a Roth or even a traditional IRA. As long as you're making your minimum payments, I think that splitting between investing and paying down debt for most people is probably optimal. That way, if there's a big drop in the stock market, at least you're putting some money towards a guaranteed returns on your loans. And if stocks continue to go up, then you might get a higher return on that money. So it kind of hedges your bets there. But that's just my opinion. I would rather invest some money instead of putting everything towards debt. And really, in my opinion, I would put as much as possible into the tax deferred accounts, go on an income-based repayment plan, and try to defer the paying down the debt as long as possible.
And that's a very individual decision. Lewis, we've written a lot, or Jared's written a lot of articles about this. I know I keep saying that, but he put a lot of time and effort into these well thought out articles that I think explains things a lot better. We have chosen to go on an income-driven repayment that works well for our situation. We do know that a lot of therapists would prefer, especially travel therapists with all this extra income we should be making, when things are normal, they prefer just to pay off their loans really quickly in the beginning, and that's fine, but you are missing out on some compounding interest by not putting money in your retirement accounts early in your career. Now, if you only have to defer 1 or 2 years to get those student loans paid off and you start investing still very early in your career, still in a good situation, but if you can contribute a little bit, like Jared said in the beginning, that's a good thing.
Yeah, and in terms of compound interest, I wouldn't focus on that too much because the thing is, interest is compounding against you on your student loans. It's compounding for you when you invest. So you're really a victim of compounding one way or the other. But yeah, I think that it's always best to split the money into multiple different places just to hedge your risk a little bit. Like, you know, putting all the money in stocks, you could make a ton, but you could also lose a ton. So yeah.
Stacy said, do you have any recommendations for a new traveler on what to bring to assignments? So Stacy, I think we actually did a whole video about packing and moving, and I can link to that after this so that you can read it. But basically, try to bring as little as possible in terms of clothing. You know, only maybe one type of each certain pair of shoes. You know, don't bring every shoe that you own. Don't bring every piece of clothing that you own. The basics, find out what is going to already be at the place that you're going to be living. Like if you're renting a furnished place that already has some kitchen supplies, then maybe you don't have to bring all of your kitchen supplies. But if there's something you can't live without, like for us that might be like our Instant Pot, we would definitely bring our Instant Pot, but we wouldn't need to bring all of our dishes and our own broom and our own vacuum and stuff if some of that stuff is there. And if you're traveling really far away and you just don't have the space, a lot of people just buy cheap stuff when they get there.
Yep.
For example, just a couple cheap plates at Walmart or the Goodwill or something like that.
Yeah. All right.
Nick suggested that Clear Value Tax has good videos for beginner stock investors.
Yep.
Thanks for that, Nick. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. Again, even after the video's over, if you want to leave us any comments, ask us any questions, send us a message, we'd be happy to help. I know this is a really difficult time for a lot of people, you know, us travelers included. So any way that right now that you can set yourself up for a better financial situation, we hope that some of the ideas that we gave you tonight will give you some insight on some ways that you could set yourself up for a better financial future. I think something else I didn't mention was kind of when we were talking about the utilities and your bills and that kind of thing. Don't get stuck thinking you always have to pay the bills the way they are. During these difficult times, make some phone calls. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and find out if there's a way that they can cut you some slack on, say it's a debt you owe, like a credit card. Could they cut you some slack on your interest rate? You know, could they maybe defer one of your payments because of the pandemic? Are they making any exceptions for those types of things? Things like your cell phone bill and your cable and your internet and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes if you call, they'll have a special deal going on, or you threaten to move to the competitor, they'll cut your rates, that kind of thing. So think outside the box. Think of some ways that you can improve your finances, especially when things are really tight like right now.
Yep. So next week, next Sunday evening, 9 o'clock, we're planning on doing another live video. So if you guys are listening to this later, tune in on Sundays at 9 when most of our videos are, and you can ask us questions live. Like I said, we got the podcast going. If you could like this page, the Travel Therapy Mentor page on Facebook, on Instagram, we just got to 8,000 followers, so we're going to be doing a giveaway soon. So like the Instagram page, Travel Therapy Mentor.
Yep, find us on all the social medias.
Yep.
All
See
right,
you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.